Split screen, online cooperation, and multiplayer. Many of us love to solo queue our elo into oblivion, so maybe it's high time we team up with friends or even strangers in these new and upcoming co-op games in 2024. There's a huge amount of variety in this list, but are you on anyone's team? Let's find out. Beginning the collaboration is Outward 2. This is a challenging action RPG with survival elements, which is focusing on believable and a relatable experience. And this one is trying to be hardcore. It's specifically saying that there's no hand-holding, no leveled encounters, no divine gift making you tower over your enemies. You have to face the music and go through the challenges in this one. Now, this is a sequel. The original game did actually get a definitive edition kind of remaster just a couple years ago, and it is very popular. People love it. And people are very hyped about this one, Outward 2. It's looking good, there's a lot of promises, and it's been having demos and going through some alpha showcases and stuff through 2024. Promises here are high replay value. It's sort of an Iron Man mode where it's constantly auto-saving, so you can't go back on your choices and failures. You have to live with them. And there's dynamic defeat scenarios, and of course, it's a survival game with survival elements, so there's a crafting system, and a big world to explore, equipment to use, combat skills and spells to learn, and a responsive and flexible combat system. So it all sounds very interesting, and this being a co-op list, you are able to play this solo, but you can play it cooperatively, online, or even in split screen. So this one is just going to be a good one that you can jump into with a friend and survive this harsh world together, which sounds like it could be a good and bad time at the same time. Next up, we have today's sponsor, Super Battle POLYCARS. Click the link below to check it out. Today we've been sponsored by Uper Game Studios with this new game that reminds me of Twisted Metal, but in a more sort of modern setting. This one is sort of a driving combat game, you know, vehicular combat, arena sort of stuff, where you'll be fighting for victory alongside your teammates in a massive online vehicle arena. And you'll be putting your driving skills and your shooting skills to the test in arena death matches. Now, besides the arena deathmatch modes, there's also a MOBA. It's like a MOBA, but with vehicles. And you'll be defending lanes and fighting for XP in the jungle. So it's, you know, imagine a MOBA, but you're all cars. And that's kind of an interesting take on a vehicle combat game. As with most co-op games, you are able to play this solo as well, but this one is sort of designed to go in with multiple people, with friends and strangers, and teaming up with team versus team. That sort of is where the hectic, massive damage is gonna come from. But also, this one has some very nostalgic things. The main menu is sort of like your garage, and you're like customizing your vehicle, and you hop into the battles and then hop back out with your progressions and customizations, and it's all physics-based combat. And also I should mention that there is a leaderboard, so as you play through the game and compete with other people, you'll be climbing the ranks to see who can be the best driver and shooter. And if you reach the top of the leaderboard, you'll be unlocking special stuff just for the top performers in early access. So this one is going into early access on the 28th of June in 2024, but at the time of recording, there is also a free demo. So no worries whether you're interested or just intrigued by Super Battle POLYCARS. You can go ahead and try the free demo, so make sure you click the link below and then see if this is one that you want to be driving around in with friends or strangers. Next up, we've got an interesting looking one. It's called Towerborne. Now in this game, you'll be adventuring together, venturing out from your home base solo or with up to 3 other people to vanquish the looming terror that surrounds your tower. Either way, you won't be alone. So in this one, companions are recruited to join you in battle, and you gain access to enhanced skills and unique abilities which are tied to each other. And as you fight your way through enemies, you return back to your home base to turn in the quest, you reforge gear, and set yourself up to go back out again. That's the gameplay loop here. But really, I think the thing that stands out for this one is the way it looks. It just looks so pleasant on the eyes, and it has this sort of cel-shaded, anime-esque kind of approach that just kind of looks nice. So this one does have sort of indie vibes, but the reason why it looks so good is because it is actually published by Xbox Game Studios, and this seems to be a very interesting take on a co-op game. Now, there's no specific release window for this one, but it has been getting updates through 2024, so we can expect to see more of this moving forward, and hopefully it does deliver on all of its promises because it's looking good. The trailer looks great. It just needs to play as good as it looks. For a retro throwback, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Rita's Rewind. Did anyone else grow up watching Power Rangers? It was sort of a inane show, if nothing else. But, you know, it was this just sort of wholesome, fun heroes kind of thing. And it's surprising to see a Power Rangers game in this day and age. But here we go, Rita's Rewind. It is a sort of Streets of Rage-esque brawler fighter kind of game with you and your friends playing the Power Rangers. And just the sort of 2D neo-pixel-ish art aesthetic with some 3D elements. I mean, it's just a throwback to like PS1 era. And I think that kind of makes a lot of sense with a Mighty Morphin Power Rangers game, especially when it's about Rita's Rewind. And you just see the screenshot of the arcade bar ice cream parlor they used to hang out in, and it's like, yeah, that's okay, yeah, it's a throwback. But it's not just throwback and a classic retro experience in every way. It does seem to have taken what basically games wanted to do in the early to mid 90s and added in, you know, the ability with new technology and new stuff that we can do today to really fulfill some of those experiences that were technologically not really possible back then. So it's sort of this 90s gaming aesthetic and 90s gaming experience tweaked for the modern era, and I think that's what is a really good approach. And you can play this offline or online with up to 5 players. So for the nostalgic ones, you might be excited about this, but it's hard to say how exactly this is gonna turn out. It is supposed to release in 2024, but we'll see if they can actually deliver on a good game and not just a nostalgia trip. Continuing some of the nostalgia, but in a very different flavor. Killer Klowns from Outer Space, the game. This is one of those survival horror team games where you'll be planning your own alien invasion and harvesting humans as the iconic killer clowns. So in a lot of these survival horror games, you do get to play the villains as well. But in this one, you can do both. You can play the killer clowns, or you could play as a team of survivors fighting the extraterrestrial threat, based on the 80s cult classic movie. Now, this one, we don't have to guess how it is. It did just release on the 4th of June in 2024 to mostly positive reviews after a couple thousand user reviews on Steam. So people are generally liking Killer Klowns from Outer Space, the game. It's what we would expect from this kind of game, where it's 2 teams, PvPvE kind of approach, the hide and seek, the survivors hiding from the horror monsters. There's a lot of games like this out there right now. It's a popular format. But this one is an interesting twist with the KKFOS approach to it, if you want to call it that. Anyway, I thought I wanted to share this with you because it's a co-op game, whichever team you're playing for, and it seems like an interesting one. Hey, now that you're a bit into the list, I'm sure you're enjoying it, so it'd be greatly appreciated if you can like the video. Thank you! Alright, next game. For an action-packed one, Tears of Metal. This is a medieval hack-and-slash co-op roguelike. You'll be carving your way through hordes of enemies to reclaim your island with the help of your formidable Scottish battalion. As you advance deeper into the trenches, you uncover more about the mysterious dragon meteor and the treacherous enemy invasion. Now, there's all sorts of co-op games in this list, but this one really is the one that's about action, hack and slash, and there is, a lot more to it than just that. You'll be reconquering your island, there's progressions, there's upgrades, you can improve your own soldiers, and it's about fighting in these massive hordes of armies clashing against each other. And of course, there is also some base management. You'll be expanding your settlement and unlocking new ways to play as you upgrade and unlock new shops and equip more permanent upgrades and unlocking more challenges. There's a lot to do here. This one, of course, like most co-op games, you can play it solo, you can do it by yourself, going through the 45 handcrafted environments, but this is sort of intended to be a co-op experience, so you can team up with your friends and just go hack and slashing your way through these hordes of enemies, which just seems like a good time. Now, at the moment, there's no particular release window for this one, but it's looking like it's coming along, so I do expect to see more of this later in the year. But for now, we can keep our eyes on Tears of Metal if hack and slash is the kind of multiplayer experience you're looking for. And then a contentious one, at least on launch, Sneak Out. This is a free-to-play multiplayer game which is supposed to be full of mischief and fun for up to 6 players, and you'll be entering the haunted castle to prepare to hunt, hide, or prank, with all sorts of mayhem going on as you try to win a deadly game of hide and seek. You're trying to escape or trying to catch. But this one did release on the 6th of June 2024, and it is a free-to-play game. But there were a lot of things that I should mention. There are in-game purchases and microtransactions, as you would expect with a free-to-play game, but on launch there was also a lot of criticism about pay-to-win. Now, it is said that the pay-to-win elements have been removed, but that's why it currently has almost a couple thousand user reviews on Steam, but it's at a mixed 44%, 45% right now, kind of not looking so good. Now, this is the kind of game that might progress into something later on in the year. They have been looking at the criticisms and trying to fix things. Apparently the pay-to-win stuff has been removed, but it has to be said that there was pay-to-win, and maybe there will be pay-to-win. So this is something that you want to be very aware of before you jump in. As with most free-to-play games, you have to keep in mind the microtransactions, the premium currencies, and what could or couldn't be added in the future. So, Sneak Out might be something that you want to get into, but step cautiously. Moving on for a more spacey arcadey shooter, The Quantum Conflict. This is supposed to be an action-packed dogfighting game with up to 8 players, or AIs if you want to go solo, but up to 8 players, locally or with remote play together. You'll be using outlandish sci-fi weapons, including a wormhole maker and time-altering munitions, while avoiding asteroids, other wormholes, gravity, and hazards in an endless space exploration kind of game. This is that sort of arcadey shooter, multiplayer mayhem kind of thing, which can be a nice fun time with you and your friends, just hopping on in and shooting at each other. It's sort of a more retro nostalgic approach as well, but this one is sort of a more modern take to it. There's a number of things here. There is a single player mode with 90 challenge stages and various difficulties and skirmish matches, and you can load in AI instead of, other people. But it is sort of designed with multiplayer in mind. Now, this is supposed to be releasing in July 2024, but if you're curious, there is a free demo for this one, so you can just jump in, have a look. If you're intrigued with this kind of game, you can just try it right now, and then you can see if this is one that you want to start flying around in and shooting at each other with you and friends or strangers. Switching gears to a cute, charming one, Brick Buddies. This is a duo crane control kind of game in a goofy couch co-op challenge thing. You're racing against time and woolly obstacles as you grab a stick, stack sky-high blocks, and you rack up points. But those sheep are gonna try and knock you down. So essentially, it's an elaborate game of co-op Tetris-esque, but not Tetris. You actually want to build it tall. You're just trying to build a tall stack of stuff with you and a friend. And there's a career mode, there's endless mode, there's what you would expect from these kind of games, but cooperation is key, so you're gonna have to be responsible for different tasks, rotating the crane, picking up building blocks, and scaring away the sheep. You gotta work together to build the tallest tower possible against a clock. So this is a pretty straightforward game, but it's a nice, fun-looking co-op experience. You know, not everything has to be super serious, and this one is a goofy, funny-looking one. So Brick Buddies, couch co-op, you and a friend, get to stacking, might be a cool party game. See, when it comes to co-op games, some are very good for parties, some are not good for parties. This is one that's good for parties. You know, you don't want to be having a party or a date over and you load up Portal 2. That's not gonna be the game for that time. But something like Brick Buddies, where it's just you and a friend, you know, the group can watch as you try and win, see who gets the highest score. That's what these kind of games are for. So keep in mind, even though these are all co-op games, they are for very different contexts. But Brick Buddies, this one seems like a fun little time. A game that released earlier in the year, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. This is from the creators of Batman Arkham, and Kill the Justice League is a third-person action shooter where the ultimate band of misfits must kill the Justice League. I mean, it's kind of in the title. Now, this one released on the 2nd of February 2024, so it's out already to many thousand user reviews on Steam, to mostly positive user reviews. It's floating somewhat above the 70% mark, so generally successful so far. Now in this game, each squad member brings their own traversal mechanics to help you navigate a sprawling and battle-torn metropolis, and it combines free roaming exploration and combat verticality for this action-packed experience. Now, as this game has already released, you can know exactly what it is, and you should know that as they're going through the game, it is going through seasons, so there's more content and more things that you can buy. There's a digital deluxe edition, so keep in mind just buying the base game. This game is doing the thing where content is sold separately, so keep that in mind. But if you do enjoy this kind of game, then this can be a nice one to get into with you and your friends playing the Suicide Squad. So that's kind of fun. But yeah, no secrets here for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Alright, this next one I'm gonna mention because a lot of people are gonna ask about it, but it'll come with some explanations as well. SMITE 2. This is a MOBA, so you can think Dota, but it's a sequel to SMITE, which is a very, very popular game, and this one is very hyped. Now at this point, you might be wondering about the curation of this list and how it can seem a little inconsistent. Like, what makes a game co-op? Is Counter-Strike a co-op game? You are playing teams, you know, so with this particular list, I'm trying to focus more on games that aren't fitting into my other lists. So it's not just multiplayer shooters, like first-person shooters with multiplayer elements and teams. I have a first-person shooters list. This list, this co-op games list, is supposed to be more about this cooperative experience, but SMITE 2 sort of doesn't quite fit into what I'm doing with the rest of this list. However, it is this third-person action team game where you are fighting with a team of people versus a team of people. So it's not quite a co-op game, but I know everyone's gonna be asking about SMITE 2. It is releasing on the 30th of July 2024, and it is just supposed to be a better version of SMITE in every way, which is very difficult to do when you have this very successful game and you want to make a sequel to it. It can be difficult to live up to expectations and all the hype. So I did want to mention SMITE 2 here because it has been going through some tests and closed alphas and all that sort of thing. And it's a MOBA, so I would expect, if not on launch, eventually be microtransactions and things like that. So do keep that in mind. And they're already selling deluxe version, ultimate version. It's got all of that stuff, right? It's not a free-to-play game, but it's gonna have all of these carved up bits of content as well. But SMITE has been very popular in the past, it still is very popular, So if SMITE 2 is just a step up from the original game, then this one's going to be massively popular. Moving on, a very interesting kind of roguelike game, 33 Immortals. This one is a co-op action roguelike for 33 players. That's right, 33 people will jump in and you're playing a damned soul and you're rebelling against God's final judgment. You pick up and raid, you cooperate and survive hordes of monsters, defeating massive bosses, and you face the wrath of God in a fight for your eternal life. So, this is all about 33 of you performing heresy. And it's an interesting take. So it's this sort of rogue-like action. You run in there and you all go at it, and I guess some of you will make it to the end. And that's sort of an interesting approach to all of this, right? It's got what you would expect, unlocks and bits of character progression and stuff like that as you go through the levels and fight your way through the bosses. And there's just a lot of games that are like this, but not many of them that are so focused on the kind of horde of you going at it. Usually it's just one of you going against all of these enemies. You know, you can think Hades, you can think, well, basically anything of Supergiant does, but 33 Immortals is multiplayer co-op. 33 of you are working together to get through everything, and you can see who actually makes it to the end. Alright, then I have to mention a game that went kind of viral, Content Warning. This is a weird one. You and your friends are filming video and you're trying to do scary things to become SpookTube famous. So you go into a scary environment and you do things to try and just capture scary footage to go viral. And, you know, describing it doesn't really sound like a game, but I guess it is. Yeah, I mean, you're trying to create viral content. It's a game for budding YouTubers, I guess, but old school because it's all about scary things. That's kind of out of vogue right now, but oh well. Content Warning is a game about that, and it released on the 1st of April 2024, but not as a joke, and it received tens of thousands of user reviews on Steam at very positive, almost overwhelmingly positive reviews, over 90% positive, and it's just one that sort of went viral, and it exploded, and everyone played it, but I'm not sure about the longevity of these kind of games. We've got another game later on that's sort of like this, where it releases and it goes massively viral, massively popular, everyone plays it, but eventually some of the novelty wears off and then people kind of stop playing it. So it's hard to tell if Content Warning will be able to continue its popularity, but it is a co-op experience. You and your friends are working together to produce these videos. And yeah, so it's a co-op game, and I thought I should mention it, and it's an interesting, different one at the very least. Going back to the survival horror, the Outlast Trials. This is supposed to be a mind-numbing terror of a time with friends. You could go through it alone, but you can do it in teams in multiplayer co-op, and the big question is whether you'll be able to survive long enough and complete your therapy session. So this is a horror survival game, and it did release on the 5th of March 2024 to very positive reviews, also over 90% positive, at currently over 40,000 user reviews on Steam. So for those of you who like survival horror, the Outlast Trials has been a very big success in 2024. So you should already know whether you want to get into this. It's a survival horror game, and it is pretty heavy on the horror aspect. It's not to my personal taste, it's a scary thing, and it's a gory thing, so just be aware of that. But it is very, very successful, and for those of you who like survival horror, then this co-op survival horror experience is one that I think you will enjoy. Personally, I'm gonna move on. Now, in a similar vein, but I suppose a little bit more toned down, No More Room in Hell 2. This is a zombie survival horror with cooperative survival in a kind of Left 4 Dead approach to the genre. So if you know Left 4 Dead, it's a team of you're fighting through waves of zombies to get to a destination, right? And this one is up to 8-player co-op action horror experience, and you and your friends have to survive in this dark and dynamic, endlessly replayable zombie apocalypse. So this one is going to be entering early access at some point. They haven't fixed the window quite yet, but they've been showing off quite a lot. So I would expect the 2024 release into early access for this one, and they're planning to stay in early access for at least 1 year. So my expectation is to see this become playable in 2024 for a full release in 2025. And if you want Left 4 Dead, but they're not making a new one, there's this one, No More Room in Hell 2. Now, the original game, No More Room in Hell, released in 2011 to big success. It's actually free to play right now, and it's also at very positive user reviews. So No More Room in Hell 2, all it has to do is be slightly better than the original, bring in some new content, get that massive replayable map actually fun, and you can go ahead on your zombie rampage. Now, earlier I mentioned a viral success, and I do have to mention this one, Lethal Company. You probably have heard of this one. It's a co-op horror scavenging game. Not too horror, but still a little bit horror. And you and your team go into abandoned facilities to scavenge for scrap, which you bring back and then you sell for money, and you have to meet a quota. Otherwise, you get fired by the company, in which case fired means jettisoned out of your spaceship into the vacuum of space. Now, these abandoned facilities are not so abandoned, they are filled with monsters and horrors and terrors, and this one blew up. It was one of the biggest games of 2023, and it's still in early access, so it's technically still an upcoming game and a new game in 2024. But a lot of the hype has died down. Having said that, died down from an overwhelmingly positive response. It got over 300,000 user reviews on Steam at 97% positive. So even though Lethal Company has died down from its virality, it is still a very popular game and still being updated and developed, and it's getting more stuff, so it's probably still relevant. So I did want to mention Lethal Company here, and similar disclaimer with content warning, where the virality might die down, but some games that go viral manage to sustain some longevity. So Lethal Company had the biggest start you could ever hope for, and we'll see if it manages to maintain that through to the end of 2024 as it works towards the final release, which is at an uncertain point in the future. There's no particular window for it finishing, so for now it's just in early access. Going back to the roguelite formula, Sworn. This is a 1 to 4 player co-op action roguelike where you'll be exploring and reclaiming a fallen Camelot from the reign of a corrupted Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table. This is one of those action, sort of isometric kind of hack and slash kind of games, which does look very good from the initial trailer, and also there is a free demo which you can just jump in and try. So Sworn is looking pretty good so far. And with a free demo, it is being confident. Now, in this game, you will be exploring this fallen Camelot, meeting familiar friends and foes from Arthurian legend, and you'll be discovering the source of the spreading darkness. It's got what you would expect from an action sort of hack and slash adventure kind of game, blessings, powers, weapons, all that stuff. And going into this game in co-op does look like it's gonna be a relatively good time. Of course, you can do it solo, as with most co-op games, but yeah, up to 4 players in a co-op action roguelike. I mean, it has to be said, a lot of these games do seem to be spawning from the success of Supergiant games, you know, Hades, Transistor, Bastion. They sort of pioneered and mastered that subgenre of games, and it does seem like a lot of games are trying to do that, but in co-op, in multiplayer, and bringing that as more of the core experience, and Sworn is on the way. looking for a 2024 release. Okay, this next game is not quite new, but I'm gonna mention it because it's looking at a full release. Core Keeper. This is a game that released into early access early in 2022. So it's been a couple years in early access, and it was sort of reaching its way to the point where I would no longer consider it new anymore. But Core Keeper is just about 2+ years old at this point, and it is planning to go into full release, supposed to be in August of 2024. So this one, you'll be exploring an endless cavern of creatures, relics, and resources in a mining sandbox adventure with 1 to 8 players. You'll be mining, building, fighting, crafting, and farming to unravel the mystery of the ancient core. So think sort of a Terraria-ish experience, but you're underground and mining, you know, with 1 to 8 players. So it is sort of this cooperative survival mining crafting experience. Now, because it is an older game, I don't want to spend too long talking about it, but I just wanted to let you know that Core Keeper is looking at a 1.0 full release later on in 2024. Now, speaking of older games, I'm gonna actually mention an older game, Cult of the Lamb. Now, yes, I know, this game fully released in 2022. I know, it's not a new game. However, a long-requested feature, which is multiplayer co-op, is being added this year in August 2024. Cult of the Lamb Unholy Alliance is what it's being called, and you'll be able to join up in local co-op, which may or may not be what you're looking for. So okay, it's not full multiplayer, it's not like online multiplayer, but it is local co-op, and you can imagine playing Cult of the Lamb couch co-op. And that, I think, is an experience that a lot of people are going to want to be looking for. So local co-op is coming to Cult of the Lamb, and you can expect once they've got local co-op running, they might bring it to online multiplayer later on. But for now, Cult of the Lamb is getting local co-op in 2024. So if you're looking for co-op games, then I think this is one that you would want to know about. So even though this is an older game, the cooperative multiplayer is new. And finally, I think I have to mention one of the biggest games of 2024 that's already released, HELLDIVERS 2. This released in February 2024 and blew up, past everyone's expectations. The developers didn't predict it, players didn't predict it, but something about HELLDIVERS 2 just struck a chord with pretty much everyone. And it is like exclusively a co-op game. Like, you're not fighting other players in this one, it is the players versus the environment. It's PvE, killing bugs, killing robots, and it's just massively successful, massively popular, millions of players, and it would have a higher user review if it wasn't for Sony trying to force people to link their PSN accounts to their PC games and stuff like that. But they retracted that, they decided to finally go back on that. So a lot of negative reviews are about that. But outside of that, it's received many positive reviews, and even after the debacle, it's gone back to mostly positive overall and recent. So generally, this is just the co-op game of the year, I suppose. And it might be game of the year, honestly speaking. It's maybe a bit too early to call that, but HELLDIVERS 2 has just been one big massive success outside of just a teeny little massive misstep, but HELLDIVERS 2, you've probably heard of it. It's basically Starship Troopers, but you're fighting bugs and Terminators on various planets, and they just knew how to build a community around this and put everything together in just the right way for it to work. But yeah, HELLDIVERS 2, co-op game of the year most likely, and also maybe even game of the year. There you have it. Press the like button and get games using the GOG referral link below to support videos like this one. Click the link and buy any game, it really does help. Also, thank you to all the patrons and YouTube members who really support this channel and keep videos like these being made. Join if you want your name on future videos. And remember, of course there are more co-op games out there, And sometimes they're like first-person shooter team hero games, and I have a first-person shooter list for that. Or maybe they're like co-op multiplayer RPGs, and I have RPG lists for that. This list was about these sort of specifically cooperative experiences, which didn't quite fit into all of these other lists, and you can see how many great games there are right here, and there's gonna be so many more great games over there. So be sure to check out the other list videos linked on screen right now, as I'm sure you would want to see them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you there.